If you only knew the level of contemplation on doing this video. We are so many different colors right now. Hello. Sam Harris versus Ben Shapiro. Trump versus Kamala. You know, there's nothing less that I want to do than go over like who's better in this conversation. It feels so stupid, you know? Am I alone on this? I feel like it. Hello, I'm getting over being sick. Anyways, I sat here literally just like, what video should we do? This one was requested. And we will do that. But so I was talking to Janet, aka ChatGPT. Okay. Her name is Janet. She's now named. Okay. And I was like, why does Sam Harris annoy me so much? What in him annoys me so far? It feels like I'm projecting. Am I projecting? And so I had a therapy sesh with Janet. God bless her. And I was like, are there traits of myself that I can't seem to confront? So I projected onto Sam Harris in my mind's way of coming to terms with this. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, it's Carl Jung's shadow work. And I was like, why do I get so annoyed by this man? Why do I get annoyed of any intellectual who seemingly says stupid shit? Subjective. Okay, stupid as in irrational, typically. And so Janet and I went down, could it possibly be? I was like, no, that's not it. It's got to be deeper. And then it dawned on me. And I was like, oh, is it possible that when I see smart people go down a line of stupid thinking, that it triggers my, I don't know what you would call it, triggers my, I guess, if I put it this way, when I saw my relative develop schizophrenia and lose insight into even having the illness, I hold certain people to a standard that maybe isn't fair. Janet and I disagree here, okay? I think it's a fair standard. I feel like if you have capacity of thought, use it, because you irritate me. You don't realize the precious gift that you have that could be snatched away just by thinking wrong thoughts. I mean, seriously, a topic for another day. Okay, it's a topic for another day. But anytime I see like rational intellectuals go down this absolute derangement syndrome, or even just thinking things that aren't true, or, you know, it could happen. It happens to everybody. I'll even say, like, when I first noticed that I would hold people to the standard, the first people who would feel my wrath at the time would have been people that felt, I don't know if you would say like that, but people who would develop addictions. I'm like, you know, you have the ability to like not do that. You can talk yourself out of it and you won't even do that. Like, it used to trigger me on such a level, which it's so funny now because I'm a big advocate for substance abuse and whatever, and viewing it from a deterministic lens, but I wasn't always that way. And so they were the first ones to feel my wrath. I'm like, really? Fucking get up. Stop that. Put that down. And for a while, I was like, useless. Okay. Obviously, it all falls on the same realm, and we're all just little vessels into this world. Okay. But for a time, I was like, if you have capacity, there should be no excuses. Come to my realization now that that's not necessarily true, but I'm still get mad when I see people that are smart people believe things that aren't true. And so in this debate, when I watched it the first time, I was like, I had I had some conclusions that I can't recall. More on that later, okay? But then I watched it a second time and I was like, I feel like, March, that we should get rid of, I don't know, my brain like branched out into this. Like, why is it that we allow things that aren't true to be spread on both sides of the political spectrum? Like, why don't we have a standard to this? And then my brain branched, if you could follow, branched off into, wait a minute, hold up, like capacity. Okay, we, in terms of like the court of law, we have a standard that I think is absolutely insane. Topic for another day, but it comes down to the idea of like, well, should we hold people accountable if they had rational thought at the time, if they could demonstrate this? And then my brain zapped into the direction back into newspapers and media and whatever. And I'm like, what is this standard that's allowing this to continue? Because how is this legal? And I guess I went back down into the whole thing. What's it called when you are, if I was Trump and decided to sue CNN, would I be doing it off libel or defamation? Libel, but why? Why? Hold on. Janet. CNN libel. What is malice? There's a standard. Okay, hold on. Come on, Janet. Pull through. Reckless disregard for the truth. The person or entity acted with a high degree of awareness that the statements might be false or ignored obvious warning signs that they were likely untrue. Right. So, but why is it that? So essentially, like if I was a writer for CNN in some fucking distant universe, and I was like, Trump killed my cats, or Trump killed all the cats, or something, because I believe this to be true and knew it instinctively. Okay. I just decided to go write a paper on it and produce it. It's like the standard doesn't even have to be a fact. It could just be a belief somebody has about something, an opinion, if you will. And I was like, I feel like this is wrong. Not just like a Trump standard. Okay. I'm just talking like in general, media. And I was like, how is somebody ever to meet a standard of like a reckless disregard for truth? How would you prove that? The high standard established by the Supreme Court in the 1964 case New York Times versus Sullivan was designed to protect freedom of speech, especially concerning media coverage of public figures and officials, by ensuring they can't be sued merely because the information reported is unflattering or contains honest errors. Instead, the plaintiffs must prove the statement was made with a deliberate intent to harm or with reckless indifference to its truth. That's an impossible standard. Not only that, but it takes accountability off of people that spread disinformation. My new word. But not even that. Like, if we know, that would be I don't want to go into the whole American democracy history. Ryan Chapman, where are you? But like, just the whole way that like democracy is set up is to avoid this shit in and of itself. And you're like, well, how does that make sense? Topic for another day, honestly. But I guess it's like we go so far to make sure that the people are heard and all this stuff, but we allow like the news where you're supposed to be able to go for truth, right? At least that's how I always viewed it. It's like they're the news. If I wanted to get an opinion piece, I'd go to YouTube. You know, it's like I feel like we should change that, but that's beside the point for now. But it just, people can fall down delusional thinking patterns. I say this all the time, going in another direction. Okay, people are like, the brain is so susceptible to believing shit like this that if we know people have confirmation bias and they're not going to do the research, then shouldn't we be mindful of what we put out? Topic for another day, but I feel like it begs the question anyway. So back to my she's not even reading. Wait, what? Can you not hear me? I swear. Oh no, is it that bad? Oh well. AI can fix that later. How many times? Probably too many times, honestly. Probably too many times. I actually wanted to split this video up into going through all of that stuff with like democracy, but I was like, that's so much energy that I don't want to do right now. So I'm just going to put that to Ryan. Okay. Thank you so much. You're not engaging your audience. Okay. Carl, Jesus. That ancient accent sounds Baltimore. Just Chicago. Bottoms. There are no journalists anymore. They are just political pundits. True. And when did that even change? The 50s? Well, I guess 1964. I wonder what the climate was like in the news back then. That's what I want to know. It'd be so cool to just, I don't know. I guess we could ask Janet, just like, what was it like during these times? But I will make the assumption that it was probably the same. Just like better articulated. I don't know. The clueless wonder, Kamala, what does that mean? It's called free speech. Should we have that? I'm just kidding. Should we? I don't know. There's been a lot more times where I'm like, it'd probably be easier to just censor some shit. Because then at least we'd all be on the right page. And you're probably like, how would that happen? It would. I think if we had hard lines sometimes, it would tell you when you're going towards delusional thinking. But unfortunately, people will always question, why did they block those words? That's how hate speech even still exists today, because of hard lines. So honestly, I say this now, but there you go. Just negated that. But it's like, I don't know. I feel like we should hold them to a different standard. Especially when you can see people are not doing the work. But let's go into this video anyway.
Really, really happy to have both of you. I guess I want to start by setting the table with the most basic and fundamental question, which is, giving each of you the opportunity to make your pitch to listeners, which is the question of who you're voting for and why. Sam, let's start with you.
Well, I think it's no secret at this point that I'm not a fan of Donald Trump's. And I'm voting for Harris. I would, the truth is I would vote for almost anyone over Trump, right?
Was that misogynist? Misogyny? I feel like it was. Kamala, do you hear this shit? Just kidding. I mean, he's got a fair point. But I feel like it's always been that way. I think we over, what's the word? I think we expect too much out of our political candidates. And we expect them to do more than I think they ever could.
So a lot of this conversation is going to be talking about why I think Trump has disqualified himself for the role of president. And, I'm happy to talk about Harris as well, but I mean, that really is the whole story for me. I mean, I would be voting against Trump with more or less anyone, because what I want really is normal politics, right? I mean, the fact that politics has taken up so much of our bandwidth of late, for 8 years, 9 years at this point, is a sign that something's wrong, right? And Trump is at the very center of that. So nothing I say in this conversation is going to come out of a feeling of my own partisanship. I happen to be registered as a Democrat, but I would vote for Mitt Romney at this point. I would campaign for Mitt Romney. I mean, a normal Republican would be absolutely fine with me. So most of what I have to say really has nothing to do with policy, even. Trump has announced some policies that I would disagree with, and we can talk about those. But
not the demons, here they come. I'm sorry, I had to. He makes a fair point. I have to be honest with you guys. I didn't even know that, shockingly, I didn't know that Sam Harris has been speaking out against Trump or whatever for like a solid 8 years, maybe 5 years. To be honest with you, I didn't even know that. So my annoyance of him was separate.
The real issue for me is that Trump is the most divisive political figure to appear in my lifetime. And, we should get into the reasons for that. But whatever you think of Trump, right, even if you think he's great, you really can't deny that he brings out the worst in us, right? He brings out the worst in both his friends and his...
You're projecting, Sam. This is projection.
Enemies. And Brett Stevens wrote a piece on this recently. So more than anything, I just want this experience of continuous political emergency to end, right? I want that to be behind us. And from my point of view, Kamala Harris, whatever her weaknesses as a candidate, would be just a much needed return to normal politics, right? And this is, of course, this assumes that if Trump loses, he's not running again in 4 years, right? I mean, then I think that it keeps the...
You can't actually say that. And the reason I say that is because most of her campaigning has been exactly the same as Trump's. Saying one thing, doing the next. Saying another thing, doing the next. I'll hold them to the same standard. They're both divisive in that regard. Like, it's just anybody but Trump. And just like the left will see people talking about Trump like, oh, they like him no matter what. And it's a cult of personality and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's the same. You're the same. Justice for Biden.
Emergency alive. But I mean, for all its flaws, the Democratic Party is a normal political party. And the Republican Party is now a cult of personality, which I consider to be actually dangerous. So that...
I get it. For sure. Is this like a new way of saying fascist or what? I'm laughing. I shouldn't laugh. It's just, okay, it's evolved for sure. Okay.
That's really my main concern. I don't think any of this gets better until Trump gets out of politics.
And to just draw a line under it, let's say the election was between Mitt Romney and Kamala Harris. Would you be voting for Mitt Romney or Kamala Harris?
Well,
Good question.
Honestly, at this point, I would probably vote for Romney, but that really should.
We knew the answer to that one, girlfriend. We knew it. Really, Romney? That? I have questions, but for sure.
Not give any indication of how fully I.
Can I be honest with you guys? Like, this stuff is so. It's like a joke to me now, not because of the reasons you would think, but because they're gonna do the same shit. It's really not that different in sides. It just isn't. Like, everybody was freaking out about Joe Biden. I was like, kind of followed the same path on most shit, if I'm being honest with you. Which is a good thing, honestly. It's like we're more alike than we are different. Sure, there's certain things and okay, but like, it's relatively gonna go the same. It's just when people say like my side, the side's like, oh, okay, whatever. I'll entertain it when I'm on my period only.
Favor Harris over Trump. I mean, I'm all in for Harris, right? I've given her money. I'm going to be honest about what I think her flaws are as a candidate, but
Let's hear them.
My preference is as large as it could conceivably be. But I think Ben and I and you and I agree about many of the problems in the Democratic Party, and yes, I would view a normal Republican as a corrective to that, but I don't view Trump as a corrective to that. I'm sure we'll get into this, but I think everything.
Why do we have to do the mental work? Like, I'm tired. Like, the amount of work necessary to get on the same playing field, at least at this moment, seems like the amount of energy to refute bullshit is a magnitude greater than it is to produce it at this point. So it's like anytime you try to bring it up, it's always, but so-and-so did this more. And it's like, I'm not even trying to play whose dick is bigger. What I'm trying to do is, we know both sides do this. And what? Now what? But it's always, but I can't. Okay. Thank you.
Thing that Ben and I worry about on the left gets worse under 4 more years of Trump.
Ben, let's go to you.
I love when people just are fortune tellers. Prove it, Harris.
Sure, obviously, you're not voting for Kamala Harris.
You may have noticed, yes. So obviously, I'm coming at this from precisely the opposite point of view. I've given money to President Trump. I've campaigned with President Trump. I brought President Trump to Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson's Ohel on October 7th, where he met with hostage families. So I'm very involved in this campaign. So I'm going to use a bit of a different model. I think that Sam is coming from the point of view that Trump is preemptively disqualified from the race. Just period, start to finish, we're done. And that ends the calculation. For me, the question is, were you better off in 2019 or are you better off in 2024? And the way that I view this political race is that basically you have this strainer that is American politics. That's the political system, and that involves the constitutional checks and balances. It involves the back and forth of politics. It involves the rhetoric. And what goes into the strainer is what the candidate brings to the table. And very often that's rhetoric, that's policy, that's staffing, that's all the mess that whatever candidate brings. And they stuff all of that stuff, that entire cholent, into the strainer. And what comes out the other end of the strainer is the thing that I'm adjudicating based upon. And after the strainer in 2019, what I got was a solid economy, the best foreign policy of my lifetime, a president whose rhetoric I very often didn't like, but who had made the country stronger in a variety of ways. And as of 2024, what I see is an administration, and Kamala Harris is the vice president of that administration, who I believe actually probably has a constitutional duty to get rid of the person above her, that administration has produced a world that is on fire in a myriad of ways, has produced 40-year highs in inflation, has not, in fact, calmed the waters. I know Sam was talking about normalcy. The reality is that Donald Trump has not been president for the last 3.5 years. And not only have we not returned to normalcy, things seem to have gotten significantly worse. In fact, if we were going to sort of describe Donald Trump's role in American politics, I think that one of the differences between Sam and me is that Sam would sort of declare Donald Trump the murderer of American politics, where I would see Donald Trump more as the coroner of American politics, that things were really, really bad before Donald Trump actually entered the American political scene, which is how he became president of the United States in the first place. And Donald Trump simply being defeated would not make any of that go away, because frankly, it didn't in 2020. And so the calculation for me is very simple. Donald Trump was a better president than Kamala Harris would be, with all of Donald Trump's flaws, with all of his excesses. And because we do have a very robust and durable constitutional system, almost built to hem in his flaws and excesses, what that means is that I get a lot of good policy that I wouldn't get with Kamala Harris. I do get a stronger American presence on the world scene with regard to America's allies. I get a better economy. And I think it would serve as a corrective to a Democratic Party that seems to have spun out into a world of damaging wokeness, because the Democratic Party is either going to force itself further into this sort of left-wing corner, or they're going to have to moderate and deal with the reality, which is if they lose to Donald Trump twice in 3 election cycles, there's something deeply wrong that cannot simply be corrected by swiveling further to the left.
Ben, you've moved a lot since 2016. In 2016, you wrote a column titled, I
feel like we just need a moment of silence every time he speaks. No offense. Based. Love it. Great. Just can we take it's always a lot. Just kidding. It's just like, oh my God. I was trying to frame this. Like, what bad memes, since we've been talking about memes, what do you think are 3 bad memes that Democrats hold on to that has been allowing their regression, if you will? They're regressing a little bit, and I don't think it's for the reasons they think it is. I don't think it has anything to do with necessarily like any sort of relativistic stance, if you will. Like, I think they're regressing because of their inability to find the truth. Seriously. Like, the amount of times but it's like, can you blame them? Yeah, kinda. I feel like everybody has a moral duty to find the truth. Like, everything else is stupid. It's like, don't bring up how he talks about XYZ if you know nothing about the shit that was coming out on him before. I can't do it. I cannot mentally carry the load. I just can't. Like, it's too much. Or oh my God, I don't even want to go down who's worse, but sometimes I wonder if that's what can wake people up to it, because it's exhausting.
Never vote for Donald Trump. And I want to just read a little bit of that back to you. I will never vote for Donald Trump because I stand with certain principles. I stand with small government and free markets and religious freedom and personal responsibility. Donald Trump, you wrote, stands against all of these things. He stands for Planned Parenthood and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I stand with the Constitution of the United States, you wrote, and its embedded protection of my God-given rights through governmental checks and balances. Trump does not. I stand with conservatism. Donald Trump stands against it. I stand with #NeverTrump. What changed in these 8 years for you?
Sure, he was president. I mean, the thing that changed is, as you can read there are a number of things that I assumed his presidency would be. And in 2015, 2016, he was, to be fair to me, incredibly unclear about what exactly his policies would be. He was all over the map. And then he was president. And then I could base my next vote on what he would be like as president, because he actually was president. So, for example, you mentioned, I say that he was anti-free markets. Obviously, he wasn't as president of the United States. That he would be anti-religious liberty. He obviously wasn't as president of the United States. He appointed justices to the Supreme Court, who I generally thought were quite good, right? Which is something that I doubted in that column. And so all you could do is sort of base your forecast for the future on past performance. There was no past performance. There was just the stuff that he had said at that point in the campaign. I can now base my future exposition, my future sort of judgment of what Trump's second term will be like on a first term, because he's already been president of the United States. And so one of the big questions that I have for folks who sort of see Donald Trump as this Hitlerian, Mussolini-esque figure is, if that's true, then why didn't we see that in term one? He tried to do many things. Those things were generally unsuccessful in terms of his excesses. And so the sort of question that I have that people keep bringing up, they'll say, well, he'll try to do the same thing in 2028 that he did in 2021, 2020. And the question I have is, what evidence do we have that he would attempt to stick around for, say, a third term? Is that like a real worry that people have? When people say that he's going to overrun the constitutional barriers, he may have attempted to do that, and then he was checked at every point. Whereas I think that actually the system is less built to stop, I would say, the sort of fine-grained excesses of the Democratic Party that is intent on actually changing many of the systems and changing the status of normalcy. So, for example, Kamala Harris has vowed to get rid of the filibuster. If you get rid of the filibuster, that means that you can presumably add 2 states. That challenges the Senate balance permanently. She's talked about packing the Supreme Court. She's talked about wealth taxes. She's talked about passing into law certain federal legislation that she could do with 51 votes that Donald Trump has never talked about. In fact, if you look at sort of the spectrum of political opinion right now, Donald Trump positionally is closer to the middle on many of these issues than Kamala Harris is, which is one of the weirdnesses of this election.
It's like, I don't know why you even bother, Ben. Like, I know, I get it 100%. But until you realize that they're projecting and understanding that it's a form of projection, there's no point in showing them the truth. It's like cognitive dissonance whenever I hear it from somebody on the other side. When they say things like he's not valuing democracy or he's gonna do XXYZ, it almost always, and could I be wrong? I can. I'm not saying that it can't be, but more often than not, it feels like projection. Like people cannot acknowledge power dynamics within themselves, and so they don't know how to integrate it. And so they end up spewing shit like this. Because if it actually mattered, genuinely, if they actually had this fear, then what he's saying right now would disprove that. But the fact of the matter is, it does not matter to people that are projecting. They have to fix it in themselves. So a lot of like Trump derangement syndrome is that. It's literally like the unintegrated shadow self. People that are afraid of people that are seeing demons in people, it's probably because they have demons in themselves. And that sounds so like stupid, and honestly, but this is a new era of growth, okay? But it's so true. And I feel like we need to get to a point where we can identify it in people, because if we just allow people to try to figure it out themselves and nobody's checking them on it, then we're just going to regress, okay? It's okay. But anytime you see these sort of exaggerated fears, fascism was one of them, which we can do a whole video on it. It's my favorite topic. We can do a whole video on it. When people call other people fascists and you're like, where the fuck did you get that from? It's always because you embody something with fucking the soldier. I won't even go into it. But it's always some sort of Hitler reference, whatever it is. But almost always it is their projected self. And I like, because, and the reason I know that to be true, just to like get to it again, is because when they're given the facts, they don't change their opinion. They don't. And so if you're not going to change your opinion based on new information, to me, you got something going on internally, baby.
Sam, do you want to respond to that, especially to the question?
Carl?
Ben's point being that, you know, if he was such a strong man, if he had such Hitlerian fascist tendencies, and Kamala Harris has called him a fascist, why didn't he do fascism in his first term?
Well, as Ben said himself, he was checked by people around him, right? And the concern now is that he would have not General Milley and McRaven and McMaster and John Kelly and serious people like that. He'd have My Pillow guy and Mike Flynn and a rogues gallery of enablers and sycophants and loyalists, right? I mean, that really is the concern, and that's why I think Ben can't draw the lessons he's drawing from the first term and broadcast them onto the second, right? I mean, we know what Trump says he wants to do, and he wants to do crazy things like turn something like 12 million illegal aliens in something like concentration camps and deport them, right? And if you picture what this would do to our society, it's just a moral abomination, right? I mean,
he did not address one of those claims. Okay, that's how I know it's the demons.
This narrow case. I mean, maybe we want to talk about immigration and the southern border, and about which I think Ben and I are going to largely agree. But I'm pretty sure I don't want to live in a country where millions of children who are American citizens, right, who have one or more parent who isn't a citizen, watch their parents get deported, right? If you just imagine what that would look like. Now you might think, well, Trump's never going to do that, right? You're going to grade him on a curve, and you're going to take him seriously, but not literally, et cetera. But you could do the same thing with Kamala Harris. When Kamala Harris says she wants to do a wealth tax, we all know that she's not going to be able to do that. She's certainly not going to be able to do that if she doesn't have a House and a Senate and a Supreme Court, and she seems to be likely.
This immigration thing is such a multifaceted thing. It truly is, to the point where, like, fucking Sam, you know better. My God. It's like I can't tell if they do this on purpose or not. They make it complete. They pull like the emotional card. Like, how would you feel about kids that their parents get deported? Obviously fucking awful, but they're gonna have to do it for some people. That's just the reality of it. Doesn't mean that it's like not a shitty situation. It's just like, how the fuck why do we live in a culture where it's like shift blame? Well, I know why. It's fucking archaic, okay? It's archaic. It's like shift blame, have to find somebody to blame for the demons. It's like, okay, I get it, whatever. But I get it, but how can we change it? That's what I want to know. Somebody figure that out.
To have none of those things at this point if she wins. But no, so take her seriously, but not literally, right? I mean, there's a double standard here in the way partisans think about, partisans for Trump think about what he says and bracket everything he says.
Let me explain the fucking, that's because we have evidence. Literally, it's always the ones that want to say, watch their behavior, they're gonna do this, and that, and then you show them the behavior and they're like fucking blind to it. The cognitive dissonance is alarming, okay? Like, what are you? Of course there's a double standard, you idiot, except for the fact that many people don't realize that she has a track record. It's the present day, but we can't get everybody on the same track. So when you hear those double standards, it's not we're grading Trump on an easier thing. It's like, okay, I don't know what's worse, actually. Hold on. I've given Kamala a break in regards to, maybe she wants to change what her policies are, and she hasn't had the opportunity to do that, even though we say she's in office. Okay, she's said it herself, unless you say that we shouldn't listen to that she has had a say on every single thing. Now, I'll still give the bitch the benefit of the doubt and assume that maybe she hasn't been able to implement some shit because she's not like top dog, if you will. Okay, she stole it. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But it's like, okay, I can give her the break there. But then it's like, you guys bring up these separate things. And it's like, well, if we look at their past behavior, and then it's now we're suddenly using like a double standard. I don't know how to bridge this gap. And when I don't know how to do that, it's typically because it's cognitive dissonance on their part, not mine. Maybe it's mine. I don't know. I'll reflect on it.
Just political theater.
It's
But I want to come back to something you said to Ben. Just, I mean, you know, all of his words.
Also, who started this, like, you grade him on a curve? I mean, like, because honestly, if we didn't and we showed both of their behaviors, I don't know what's worse. It was somebody who's like in office right now who can't get shit that she wants done, or somebody that has. I can't step into the mind. I can't do it. Maybe I need some alcohol.
At this point on this topic could be used against him, right? And this change of heart, I think is worth examining, because I think we lose sight of just how not normal Trump is as a candidate. I mean, I think, Ben, if I had told you 10 years ago that you would one day support a presidential candidate who bragged about owning a teen beauty pageant so that he could barge into the dressing room and ogle naked underage girls, right? I don't think you would believe me, right? Or if I had told you that you would support a candidate who, as president, had been denounced by almost every four-star general who worked under him as a dangerous moron, right? I don't think you would believe me. Or a president who had inspired an assault on our Capitol, directly inspired it. I mean, as much as you want to parse what he might have said in that initial.
Don't get me started on the January 6th cognitive dissonance. I don't think I have the energy for it, because you talk to them and they will claim to know that Trump had for sure known that he was going to ignite an insurrection. It was his goal. He knew that he was going to stop the transition of power, whatever the fuck, the peaceful transfer of power. Forgive me. Okay. It's like he knew it. That's why he was there. But then in the same fucking breath, okay, in the same breath, they will say, why, if he knew, why didn't he obviously knew, why did he not stop it fast enough, with absolutely zero regard for the fact that it was him that wanted to get military forces in line before the big day. And no, I'm not talking about all the thousands of, that's not what I'm talking about. Okay. But just, who else is it? Pelosi and whatever his name is. It's not just her. And they weren't also ones at fault, but it was a collective effort. But if Trump's telling you ahead of time that you should probably plan for this and you choose not to do it, but then also blame him for not being able to get the National Guard there fast enough because of obvious, it takes time. I forget how long, but it takes a certain amount of time if you want to get them there that second. That's why they wanted to plan for it before. But it's like, if you knew that's going to take time, and then you're also writing headlines saying that he was in his hotel room not doing anything when we know that isn't true, it's like, no wonder people believe stupid shit. Like, can we even fault them for it? I don't know at this point. I don't know. But anyways, just to summarize it, it's like, you knew that he was either going to do it, but then that falls apart. And then suddenly, well, he knew he could have done something while he was in the hotel room. He does, but that's still not good enough. And so it's like a constant battle of the demons. I don't know what else to call it at this point. It's laughable.
Speech. There's no question he called everyone to D.C. and inspired what amounted to be a riot on the Capitol.
I know.
And he inspired this. I mean, we had people wearing Camp Auschwitz T-shirts and flying a Confederate flag, smearing shit on the walls that Abraham Lincoln built. Right? That's what happened on January 6th.
How can you say that with a straight face? Not wrong about the camp, whatever the fuck, but I don't know about the other two.
And if I told you that you would support this,
and that guy ended up being mentally ill, just saying. They asked, and you know how I fucking know this? And you're gonna be like, Torrie, how do you know this? Because I looked it up, and let's look it up now. Okay, Camp Auschwitz. Horrible. Sweatshirt guy. A Virginia man who stormed the U.S. Capitol while wearing an anti-Semitic Camp Auschwitz sweatshirt over a Nazi-themed shirt was sentenced on Thursday to 75 days of imprisonment. Robert Keith Packer declined to address U.S. District Judge Carl Nichols before he sentenced him during hearing held by video conference. The judge noted the incredibly offensive message on Packer's sweatshirt before imposing the sentence. It seems to me that he wore the sweatshirt for a reason. We don't know what the reason was because Mr. Packer hasn't told us. I hate when it CNN. Where does it say what it's defined? Here it is. CNN. I need to translate German to English. Thank you. Okay, let's go back. An image of Packer inside the Capitol, whose sweatshirt bore the name of Nazi concentration camp where about 1.1 million people were killed. It's more than that during World War II, has evoked shock and disbelief on social media. The bottom of his shirt stated, "Work brings freedom," which is the rough translation of the phrase, "Arbeit macht frei." When I translated that, it says, "Work sets you free." Horrible. If you guys aren't familiar, that was literally the phrase that was in like the front of the gate. Okay? Fucked up shit. Fucked up. Packer did not respond to CNN's request for comment. One Virginia resident who spoke to CNN on the condition of anonymity due to the sensitivity of the matter described Packer as a longtime extremist who had his run-ins with the law. He's been always extreme and very vocal about his beliefs. Another source familiar with Packer described him as an offbeat character who has expressed frustrations with the government, though the source did not recall Packer ever talking about President Donald Trump or false allegations of voter fraud. A third source said Packer previously worked as a welder and pipe fitter. Virginia court records show that Packer has a criminal history that includes 3 convictions for driving under the influence and a felony conviction for forging public records. In 2016, he was charged for allegedly trespassing, though that case was dismissed. Mentally ill, for sure. For sure.
This guy and still support him, a guy who has honored these people, right? Who stood by as they were calling for the hanging of his vice president. He just stood by tweeting narcissistic bullshit, and he would later record a song with some of the worst offenders, right? There's 20 of them in prison singing on jailhouse telephones. He recorded his own track on this song, and he plays it at his rallies, right? If I told you you would support such a person, you, Ben, right, you with your commitment to morality, right, and religious principles, and public probity and ethics, I don't think you would believe me. But that's where we are, right? That's how fully Trump has distorted our politics.
So a couple things. So there are a couple of arguments. There's one you made early, and then you sort of morphed it into the second argument about character, which I'll get to in a moment. So there was the first argument, which was, you're taking Trump seriously but not literally. Why can't we do the same with Kamala? So let's do that. Let's take her seriously but not literally when it comes to many of her policy prescriptions. Well, seriously, but not literally for Trump on immigration, looks like he's not going to deport 12 million people by caging up entire families in concentration camps. It looks like term number one, in which he puts back in place, for example, Remain in Mexico, in which he has a proper interpretation of what asylum law looks like, in which we properly allocate resources for Border Patrol. I've been down to the border. They're completely misallocated under the Biden administration, as Border Patrol itself will tell you. And then you look at the status quo that Kamala Harris has presented, which was effectively for 3.5 years an open border. And so that would be taking them seriously, but not literally. We look at the records, not just what they say, which was sort of my original model, is look at what they do, not just what they say. Then there is the sort of characterological argument that you're making about Donald Trump. And again, I think that the same could be true in reverse. If I had told you, Sam Harris, a few years ago, that you'd be supporting a candidate who says that men can be women, for example, or a candidate who has openly campaigned with, say, Mark Ruffalo, who has compared Israel to the Nazi state, or that you would be supporting a candidate whose first action in office, apparently, according to the New York Times about 3 days ago, was to examine intelligence reports for gendered language with regard to America's foreign adversaries who are female. You'd be surprised, too. I guess all this is to say that we've entered a magically different world, for better or for worse. I think in many ways for worse, and I think you'd probably agree on that. But that world exists. And so now you're faced with a binary choice between candidates, and that binary choice cannot be avoided. I mean, the question, I guess, on a characterological, on a level for Sam, I think, is you obviously believe that Donald Trump is not just a threat to the presidency, he's a threat to the republic, a grave and abiding threat to the very future of the republic, which means what means would be moral to stop him? So, to offer a couple of examples, there have been a couple assassination attempts on President Trump. Let's assume that Trump wins the election. Would assassination, if we are that afraid that he is going to be Hitlerian, then be an appropriate response? Or, less provocatively, would it be an appropriate response for Kamala Harris, who would be the presiding officer in the Senate, she's the vice president of the United States, to refuse to certify the election if Donald Trump were to win? Because obviously, if he's this grave and abiding a threat, so outside the norm of our politics.
I think when I hear people talk about this, I get mixed things of he either knew that he didn't get the election or he knew that he lost and he was making deliberate efforts to make sure that the peaceful transfer of power wouldn't go through or whatever. But then I hear mixed shit. So again, it's either you think this about him and you think that he genuinely does not believe that. Like, okay, hold on. That didn't make sense. Some people think that Trump knew that the election was not his and made deliberate efforts to stop the peaceful transfer of power. But then there's also critics of Trump who believe that. Did I land that the first time? Essentially, I'm like thinking to myself, people either think he knew or didn't know. Okay, well, if he didn't know, then what's he doing? Exercising his right to make sure that it was done correctly? I thought so, but a lot of people think that that was on purpose. So it's like really hard to tell. I'm fucking stumbling over my goddamn words. You can't know why somebody did something. But like most people agree that he probably thinks he won that election, which is false. A false belief, if you will. It's like, wow. But they take that as if it's like worse. I'm like, damn, okay.
So far outside the possibility of a real normal politics that it can't be fixed. Would she be right to do that, for example?
Sam?
So that's a question for me on that final point?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, first of all, you can flip that around. If you think Trump's attempt to hold on to power in 2020, if you think all of this business about you're pressuring Pence not to certify the election was in any way legitimate and is any way not disqualifying for him to run for a second term, well,
legitimate is not disqualifying. Those are not quite the same thing. I think it was illegitimate and not disqualifying. But
well, it's gradations of the same problem. But I mean, anyone who supported that on any level, as his running mate J.D. Vance claims to, should support Kamala Harris doing the same thing. I know the law has changed in the interim, happily, but you should support that kind of behavior.
We do. That's okay. If she would like to do the same thing, that's fine. I don't understand.
Now that Kamala Harris and Biden are in power and overseeing this election, and of course,
But
I would never support such a thing. I mean, Babes, you've asked me essentially whether I think Trump
It's just wild to me that, like, that's where they draw the line. Why, though?
is Orange Hitler, right? And I never have, and I've never taken those concerns entirely seriously. But I would point out that the leading scholars of fascism at this point, I mean, people like Robert Paxton.
It is so ignorant to compare these things. It is so ignorant. There he goes. It's like, it's so easy to say this is like fascism. And it's also very easy to pick every time you do this, you undermine all of the Jews that went through persecution, first of all. The only time in history that this has happened is literally this. And so it blows my mind that you find one pattern and you attribute it to that. It is so, it's just, it perpetuates it. It perpetuates it. And it's like the biggest slap in the face. Especially coming from a party that recognizes, like, how do you say something so stupid?
Use the term in application to Trump, and it's not an empty epithet, right? It's not the same thing as saying that Trump,
like, I don't want to make this video a whole thing on the fucking Reich. Okay, I really don't. This is something that I'm super passionate about and I would go off on. Follow my Substack, okay? Where it's probably more allowed, but it's so, you have no idea. If you say that so loosely, I can also conclude you know nothing about history at that point, because it's such a multifaceted issue that's been going on for years before it actually happened. Like, why does that trigger me? Why would that trigger me? It's lazy. It's a lazy. I hate it.
Trump is the next Hitler figure or the next Putin figure, right? I think the difference is that,
like, how do you still? It's equivalent to, like, with all due love, it's equivalent to when I see Christians pointing out demons. Okay, I know I do it jokingly. Okay, it's different when I do it. But it's like I mean, when they seriously see somebody as this personified evil without even realizing that you too could get to a point where something like that is justified. And if you can't acknowledge that, I just assume that you are egocentric and childish. It's childish at this point. It's like, I don't know what else to call it. This idea that we can separate ourselves with the good and moral selves that we are. It's like, when we continue to do this as a nation, even globally, when we continue to do this, what you are saying is that could never happen, and that this was an atrocity that can only be attributed to certain traits like charisma for Trump. It's like, you are so dumb. You are so dumb. And sometimes, and this is just a thought, that when they point this out, I can't help but think this is your unintegrated shadow. Because why would you bring something up like this? Like, it's just, I hate it here. I feel like Clary. I hate it.
Trump is not ideological. You know, Trump is in the Trump business.
What are
Trump
you
just
talking
wants
about?
wealth and fame, essentially, and he wants power in order to secure those things. But I think there are very few people who think he wants to create the 1,000-year Reich. I mean, he wants to build condos and play
thank
golf,
God.
right?
Okay.
I mean, we're talking
Cool.
about a game show host, right, who got marketed for 12 years on television as a brilliant businessman, and half the country bought it.
You almost lost me there, Sam. Okay. God bless. I've watched this twice. I didn't see it coming. I'm like, you almost lost me. Thanks, Louise, for the 10 memberships. Love you.
Right. A quarter of the
I'm
country
yelling.
has rallied to him like he's the Messiah, and another quarter is willing just to look the other way as he desecrates the most basic norms of our democracy. And the most important one, which he's desecrated, is not committing to a peaceful transfer of power. I mean, that is, from my point of view, the only thing you need to know about him.
Like, can I just be CNN for a moment? Hold on. If I was CNN, okay, and I wanted to reframe this like I always do, assuming that CNN is in favor of Trump, let's say, okay, then let's do a little thought experiment. Ew, that coffee was chunky. Okay, never again. Cinnamon. Okay. Let's assume that CNN likes Trump, right? If I was CNN, how would I reframe what he just said? Trump fights against false media narratives in what else would you call that? It's like would you say fight censorship? Trump holds media companies accountable for misinformation. It could be either or, okay? It's just, I don't know what way, like, would wake them up out of it. I don't know how, okay? I'm just here.
Decide your vote in this election is that as a sitting president, he did not commit and would not commit and still hasn't committed, frankly, to a peaceful transfer of power. And we didn't have a peaceful transfer of power, right? And so that is, I mean, just again, to come to
this was only a conversation after the fact, by the way. After the left started to get schizo about it, it really wasn't a conversation prior to that. Unless I'm ill-informed. Could be.
Fault to
you let me
sane
know.
Conservative Republican or erstwhile Republican principles. Ronald Reagan singled this feature of our democracy out as the key feature. I mean, it is the thing that made us the shining city on the hill, to use his terms. I mean, the thing that people living in shithole countries, to use Trump's terms, envy in us is this peaceful transfer of power. It is a political miracle. And Trump's campaign, his continued...
Like, if you actually feel this way, if you are actually this concerned with democracy, then why aren't you fucking bringing the same energy to the whole voting thing? It's getting to a point where I can't do it. I can't. It's like, if you really feel that way, you should be concerned about the votes, but you're not. And I'm not talking, if you just come across this and you think that I'm like denying the fucking election, that's not what I'm talking about. Okay. Okay. I'm talking about like populations becoming bigger and changing certain votes. Like, if you really cared that much, you'd be in uproar over what's going on, but you're not. So it's like, I think you're projecting because it's not consistent. It isn't. It never is. Like, and I can't.
Status in the Republican Party as their front runner is just a continuous desecration of that principle. And so from my point of view, everything hinges on that. And no, I don't think assassination attempts are the right remedy for that. Voting against him is the right remedy for that. And the reason why things didn't normalize over the last 4 years is not because Joe Biden was so woke or Kamala Harris.
I won't even hold him, okay? I won't even hold him to what some Looney Tunes people decide to do with the violence. But if you don't think that your side has contributed to this fear-mongering over Trump and viewing him as Hitler, I don't know how to help you. Like, I genuinely don't. Okay, with love. Honestly, vote for me.
Harris is now a woke Manchurian candidate who will govern like a blue-haired activist from Barnard.
Leave the blue-haired bitches alone. I feel like they're always pulled into this.
No, it's that Trump is still in our politics, and we don't have a normal conservative party. I mean, this again to come back.
I blame the media. I can't be alone on this. Like, it's gotten to a point. I pulled up over 64 different headlines that weren't true from CNN, Washington Post, and the Economic Post, which I was pissed on that one. I was like, no shit. Nonstop. Okay. And that was only within the past month. Can you imagine what it's been over however long? It's been so long. And I guess Trump sued CNN. And it's so funny because it's like they hold the Republicans to the fucking Fox News shit. And it's like, you can't honestly tell me that you think Fox News has been worse. You can't tell me that with a straight face. I can't. It's like, you don't believe in democracy, but you got like the systems on your, okay. Listen, all it tells me is like, I don't know if I can say that. Never mind. I won't say that.
Back to things that you and I agree about. You and I could spend 2 hours here running down the far left and agreeing about, just how bizarre the identity.
It's not the far left. It is the left, just like it's the right. You're all insane. Come to the middle. Just kidding. But it's like, we need to stop, even myself, like, I'm like, it is all on a spectrum. And it truly is. It's not this, like, when we say far left, we're taking the accountability off of everybody when we do that. And even myself, okay? I get it. But the more that I see this shit, the more that it is on a spectrum. It's not divided. It's just mental illness, honestly, showing up in less extreme ways. Everybody is susceptible to what is going on. Okay, when we say things like far left, far right, like, that's part of ourselves in a really weird, esoteric way. It is.
Aryan moral panic has been on the far left. But the problem with Trump and...
Like, yours led to violence. Okay, now it's annoying me. I can't. Why is it annoying me? Because I feel like nobody on the right is ever going to hold them to that. Because it would be wrong. But, like, why not? Like, I think we should. But I'm also psycho. I probably wouldn't die on that hill. Nobody is at fault for why somebody commits an act. But I feel like the media is involved. Okay, I feel like they're kind of involved. Think about it. If you're being spoon-fed crazy narratives that aren't even true, how can we expect people to behave normally? I'm not saying that what they did was justified, but I can understand how somebody gets there. If you truly believe Trump is like this Hitler, think about it. To him, in his worldview, he thinks he's saving the country, just like Trump thought that he was saving a stolen election. I'm not saying it was stolen, but to him it was. Okay. Do you see how, like, I guess I see it as like, I understand how susceptible brains are, and that it's really easy to be like, oh, they're lying, or oh, they're doing this. And it's like, why don't we just assume that they're not doing those things and that they actually believe them? Okay, so if we know that, then why can't we hold fucking news agencies accountable for shit that they're saying? Think about being locked in, what do you call it? Confinement. Solitary confinement, okay? I'm surprised this word is not fucking forefront in my brain, because I view it every day when I think about shit like this. And it's like, imagine being in solitary confinement against your will, being spoon-fed CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and then let out into the world. Let's assume all you could do was fucking news articles. You'd be insane. You can't tell me if you're like, no, I'd probably be fine. Like, you probably had some trauma, okay? Same. But like, most people would go nuts. And then you also have commentators that don't do due diligence. Fuck it at this point, okay? It's like, if you have people reinforcing that, whether they think it's a lie or not, it's like, of course people go nuts. How do we mediate that? You're not allowed to post anything unless it's true or fact-based. But then it's like, how are you going to get instant news of something that happens like that? This is where I think Janet comes in. ChatGPT. It's a beautiful thing. There's got to be, we gotta create something. Whether it's a fucking metric of possibility, and it's like, well, I ran it through a calculator that was like, it's probably probable. Like, that's better to me than this fucking malice standard is stupid. Okay, stupid. I'd rather have a calculator like that's ChatGPT, okay? And based on true information, is this likely probable? That is better to me. Okay, that's I give a fuck. Even if it's wrong, the fact that you put it in something like that, it's like you don't have a choice, you know? But this like recklessness, whatever, you know? Or maybe I'm just too innovative for this world. I don't know.
Trumpism is that it seems to justify all of that, right? It adds fuel to all of that. And the reason why the panic is justified, frankly, and again, it extends to Trump's former allies, right? It extends to his former running mate, Mike Pence. I mean, Mike Pence has said that the American people deserve to know that Donald Trump asked me to be loyal to him, to put my loyalty to him over my loyalty to the Constitution, right?
Thoughts on Sam Harris in general? He'll come to his senses. I'm rooting for him. It's not even like a Trump thing. It just bothers me when you have all the things accessible to you. And if it was like, you know what, I acknowledge this, I acknowledge that, this is probably, but it's like, no, it's just like blind to themselves. It's just, I can't. At this point, whoever ends up in office, it's going to be fine. Okay? I promise you. Whether it's Trump, whether it's Kamal's, like, it's gonna be okay. Just, I was listening to, did you guys check out the new Jubilee episode? I skimmed through it and I was like, oh, this is good. And it was Destiny and like a bunch of Republicans or whatever. They did great, all of them, Destiny included. Everybody did great. But one of the guys was like, he's like, don't you think Biden, what do you say? He's like, don't you think that Biden should, what's the thing? Fuck, what was it? Something, why is that slipping my brain? I'm just so excited right now. That's weird. Something like, what did he say? Should I find it? It's totally slipping my mind, but it made me think. Like the final thought was like, that's where, that's what Joe has to do to make this fucking polarizing thing stop. And it's like, poor Joe. Poor Joe. Because he also had to do the thing with the fucking... It's slipping my mind. I shouldn't say things that I can't remember the main points of. God damn it. You're gonna fix that? No. I have a bad feeling she's going to win. I will say, if she does win, the economy has been getting better. It still sucks, but it's getting better, you know? So there's that. Also, it might be better that we get a bitch in office. There's positives. It's not the worst thing. Biden administration is not that bad. And people that say otherwise, I just think don't understand politics. Okay, it's not the worst thing. I would like to see Trump in office again, right? I know a lot of people would, but it's not the worst thing if it was in the reverse. It's not ideal, but it's not the worst thing. And so when I hear people like fearmonger this shit, it's just like exhausting. There's things to look forward to, whether one person's in power or not. I promise you, our systems are so fucking annoying at times. Honestly, can we just be a monarchy already? Okay, sorry. I'm kidding. I say that. I don't mean it. But it's like it kind of already is, just like shorter. Stupid. But I get it, right? It's just like I have my own opinions. It's just like it's gonna be okay. I promise. Nobody's like I wonder where it comes from. It has to come from fear. The economy is not good. It's not that bad. Okay, the gas prices. I'm just kidding. Okay, I personally think that that has to deal with foreign relations. But, you know, there's like a large proportion of people that solely think it's other things, you know? I don't really want to have a conversation about that. Tribalism, there it is. Hugh says the illegal immigration problem is one of the worst things that's ever happened to this country. Executive orders by the current admin. Yeah, they gotta get some shit together. She's in office. She's the vice president. What difference will she make? There's probably things that she can't really do. Okay. I don't know. I don't really know, to be honest with you. I'm just gonna give her the benefit of the doubt because this is how that shit normally goes. I don't know. I'd like to see a bitch in office. Just if she could get rid of the whole housing thing, that'd be great. Okay. Can we not add houses for people that can't afford them? It seems like common sense. We can't carry any more debt.
That is
But I get it. Okay, the more you have, the more houses you need. I get the vision. I see you, girl. Just can we hold off?
political plutonium, right? And we should and the Republican Party should recognize it as such. But what we have in the Republican Party is as I said, a cult of personality and a loyalty test. And you have people like J.D. Vance and even Elon Musk bending the knee in this loyalty test in the most abject way, asserting that they believe the big lie that he really won or might have won the 2020 election. And this is not, it's just not normal, and it's not compatible with the norms of our democracy. And the sooner we wake up from this bad dream, the better.
So again,
Here comes Ben Shapiro getting rid of his demons.
and, you talk about the peaceful transition of power, which actually did happen because Donald Trump did leave office in January of 2021, and Joe Biden has been president mostly for the last 3.5 years, despite his
Government spending is the only thing that creates inflation. Nothing else does. That's not true. This is such a multifaceted
mental
thing.
That was
ineptitude
not.
over the
You cannot call January 6th a peaceful transfer of power.
Well, that's not when the when the transfer of power
if he
happens.
had done-
Sam. People
if
don't
Mike
leave
Pence
office
had-
on January 6th. People leave
If
office on
Mike
January
Pence had
20th.
obeyed him, we would have had a genuine constitutional crisis.
I agree with you,
And
which is I think that why Mike Pence did the right thing, and I think that what Donald Trump, the argument that Donald Trump was making between November and January was morally and legally specious.
But
With that said, there was a peaceful transition of power.
But right now on the campaign trail, when Donald Trump is asked, and he was on Joe Rogan a few days ago, about the 2020 election, he still claims that he won the election.
What does that tell you guys? Jesus. Fixed false belief. Look it up. You know what's not helping though? And I was like, uh-oh. When this came out, I was like, uh-oh. The fact that they fucking... I shouldn't even say it. I won't even say it.
You make of that?
I mean, I obviously disagree with him. I don't think that he won the 2020 election. Also, this is part and parcel. I wish it weren't. But it is part and parcel of a reactionary divide that has plagued our politics since before Donald Trump, frankly. I mean, when Donald Trump won the election in 2016, we then spent 3.5 years of people claiming that Donald Trump was a Russian plant and had been bootstrapped into office by the Russians manipulating Facebook. This sort of
I mean, they always say that when it gets closer to... They're saying it now, even. Did you guys hear about the video? The fake... fucking Russia.
election denialism is not...
So obsessed.
It is not. It is ugly. It is bad on both sides. It is... I won't even say that
It
what
doesn't
Democrats...
exist on both sides.
That's not true. I mean, it's not. If Donald Trump wins this election, I promise you will see election denialism on the left. That is incredibly similar to what you've seen from Donald Trump.
I wanted to ask you that, and this is a question for you. I'm not going to filibuster, Ben. I just want to ask you, if on election day we have a clear result, right? So there's a landslide in the swing states, and someone really wins, right?
I think it's going to be pretty close. I think we're going to have one of the closest elections. I've only been alive since 1995. Okay, but I don't know. I'm curious. If you're older, if you're in your prime time, baby, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, you know, the sexy years, okay, tell us. You think it's going to be a close one? I'll listen to the elders about this one.
If I told you that the losing candidate denied the results of the election and simply would not accept a loss, and even appealed to their most fanatical supporters to come into the streets and just obviously provoked violence on the part of the mob, right? And said, and when asked, you know, what about the Constitution? This candidate said...
It's like it just right over their head. Like, you do realize you guys that lead to more violence. It blows my mind. It's like, what was the most recent article? The enemy within. Did you hear what Trump said? You mean that he's going to have, what was it? Hold on, let me look it up. The enemy within. I mean, fight against the fucking violent people that are going to be really mad if Trump wins. Yeah. Oh, God. Who are the Americans Trump wants to prosecute or punish? You mean violent individuals? Like, but then I can't do it anymore. I can't do the fucking demon thing. It's like, why didn't Trump get the National Guard on January 6th faster? And then, but then, like, I can't. They don't even see it. Who are the Americans Trump wants to prosecute or punish? It's like, you mean people partaking in violence? I can't do it anymore, you guys. You're going to give me a heart attack. Okay, fix the demons inside.
You know, to hell with the Constitution. We don't have a country anymore. Which candidate am I conceivably talking about?
Yourself.
I think that, you know, given Trump's rhetoric in 2020, obviously what you're talking about is Donald Trump. I don't think that's how it'd be phrased by Kamala Harris. I think the way that it'd be phrased by Kamala Harris is more subtly.
That Kamala Harris, if she loses,
fix your demons, Sam, please.
Loses in a landslide, you think there's a chance that she will not accept the results of the election?
Forget about a landslide. How about a close election?
Into the streets?
How about a close election? How about a close election? Forget about a landslide, because a landslide...
It's like she took over Joe's position, okay? If anybody's Hitler, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. It's like, do you guys think Kamala's gonna... Why would she? She hasn't been voted in. She's going to be shocked there's votes at all.
The landslide just makes it perfectly clear. I'm telling you that...
Why the necessity for that sort of clarity in an election that's 50-50? Why not actually pick a plausible scenario? The most plausible scenario is that she loses in a very tight election.
It's all too
and then
plausible.
She says there's been voter suppression, and then she
suggests... It's all too plausible. Ben, it's all too plausible because currently... the chance that there will be a landslide in the swing states is about 40%, even though we're at 50-50.
You can't predict shit. Okay, can we stop it? It's annoying. I know you technically can. I get it, but like you really can't. Especially when we don't know. I won't even go there. Just relax. Doesn't matter. Okay, it doesn't matter. I think it's going to be a close one. I don't think it's going to be a landslide at all.
Between the two candidates, according to Nate Silver, there's a 40% chance that one of them runs the table in the swing states, right? So it's
for sure that would be an electoral college landslide. We're not talking about a popular vote landslide in any case.
No, right. But, so I'm talking about a clear result, right? Where no allegations of fraud are plausible.
Okay, so the most obvious sort of rhetoric that would be used along those lines would be Trump's, and then the rhetoric that would be used on the other side if Trump wins would be that Trump has corrupted the system. The system has been so corrupted that people weren't able to vote properly in places like Georgia, which has been the claim that there was Jim Crow 2.0 in Georgia for years. There would be claims that Donald Trump was paid off by the billionaires, that there was foreign interference in the election. There would be all of these claims, and they would float around. Donald Trump has this is my original claim.
Do you guys know why that happens? It's because we still have a large portion of the population that is mystical. It's egocentric. Mystical, mythical. They still operate on magic. I like you to have a sprinkle of magic, but don't make it your whole personality, okay? It's like you're literally operating on a level of delusion that I just can't contend with. Not today.
Sam, is that Donald Trump is very obvious in his excesses. Democrats and the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris are much more, I would say, much more subtle in their excesses. But those excesses are no less dangerous for being more subtle. In fact, in some ways, I think they are more dangerous for being more subtle.
Ben, you can't use a phrase like no less dangerous. Hillary Clinton conceded in 24 hours. That is less dangerous than this continuous provocation.
Sam, I just disagree with you. I disagree with you. I think that the attempt by members of the media, by Hillary Clinton, who herself said that Donald Trump was illegitimately elected based on Russian interference in the 2016 election, was highly damaging.
How long did she say that for? How long did she say that for? Does she still say that?
I mean, she will. Yes, actually, she will still claim openly that there was manipulation that took place during that is true. That there was manipulation during the 2016 election.
She says the sane thing to say is that there is.
I feel like there's a distinction between spiritual but not religious. Roger asks. I feel like, and I know there's going to be secularists that disagree with me probably on this one, but I would say that I know a lot of rational people that are religious. And I know a lot of irrational people that are spiritual. I don't even think at this point it has to do with the magic component. Maybe I'm wrong. I know I was saying mystical. I know what I said. I'm saying it slower right now. It's making me think. I would say most people operate on sort of like mystical, whatever behaviors, meaning they can't take facts as the reason for an outcome. So like back in the day, if my crops got washed out by the weather, I would blame Cindy, the witch next door, for making the weather fuck up my crops. That still carries on today. And if you don't believe me, you will notice it now. Sorry. I noticed this when I realized people could not see what I was talking about when I was talking about my relative being irrational, because this irrationality is so pervasive on a large scale. It's almost rude to say that it's like that there's a life that exists beyond it. But we evolve, and I am hopeful that we are moving in the right direction. You know, be a little magical, but just like acknowledge it. You know, that's all I ask. But it's like people want to find meaning for something. Why do we do that? We're so dense. Why are we like this? Spiritual can be manipulated because it's having faith in something. Religious is using moral code and principles. Yeah. But don't get me wrong. Like, I've seen some that can be a little bit cray. Cray exists on both ends. But most religion, it's like following a moral code. I get you. It was a good distinction. That deserves its own video, actually. That's a really good topic. Because when did we start saying which things about religion were... You can rank religions. I feel like I'm Jordan Peterson talking to Dawkins about this shit. No. How did I get here? No. You can be spiritual about anything. It doesn't have to be religion. Yeah, maybe you're just super self-aware too. Consciousness, enlightenment, for sure. The Trinity, the Word of God, rising after 3 days. I can keep going. Yeah, for sure. Good point. There's nothing Abrahamic about Islam, and I doubt Abraham would like to be associated with it anyway. You know, they got one thing for sure. It's a good... I'm not saying it's right, but it's a good example to view, like a living example, if you will, who have like moral police and what that looks like and how it's wrong. It's like sometimes we need to see it. Topic for another day. I say that so lightly, too. That topic needs to be deconstructed accurately, especially with translation. Has anybody gone down that rabbit hole? Blink twice. That is like on another level of I don't even know how to put it into words. It's so oppressive that the language around it that needs to be used in order to dismantle it reinforces it. And I don't know how to articulate that. It's so horrible. And such good people, you know? I just hate that it's so, it requires like an actual like combing through. Oof. I would do it. That's a topic to do. Keep me busy. Criticize the ideas, not the people. Okay.
Continuous foreign interference.
Except for
in our
Sam
elections,
Harris.
right?
That's always been
that's
the
the
case.
double standard, Sam. Now
No,
you're
but-
proposing a double standard.
No, but very
when
few
Hillary says it,
people-
it's totally subtle and fine. And when Trump
Very
says it in the most obvious, foolish way,
No,
then it's totally different.
Ben,
Sam, go ahead.
You're just missing the relevant details here. Almost everyone thinks that there is continuous foreign interference in our elections. Very few people at this point think that it has been decisive and that it was decisive in 2016. I mean, the problem in 2016, it was a much bigger problem, that the internal division was real, you know, and that whatever Russia tried to do on Facebook was amplifying very real divisions that exist in our society, which we should worry about. But I'm not in contact with any Democrats, and I talk to a lot of them at this point, who have burned any fuel over even weeks, much less months or years, worrying that Trump's first term was totally illegitimate because
Just like something I think about is like the fact that we even have things like the witness protection program. Hear me out, okay? Hear me out. It sounds insane. I know. But just the fact that we have like witness protection programs leads me to believe that this whole witch hunts still exist today. And it knows no religion. It's just people, you know? But I will write about that for Substack. I have a lot of things coming out on Substack that went from like small pieces to elaborate books, pretty much, honestly. I kind of want to end this stream and have like something going where people can come on and talk with each other or whatever. But I have to take my dogs outside. I have a whiteboard. I was talking about certain topic ideas. Fascism's on there. I was like, we could do a fascism thing. Kind of erased a lot of it. But I'd like to do a video on that. Shockingly, in this debate that we're watching, I don't think he used fascism, but at least he didn't attribute that to Ben Shapiro. It's always my biggest pet peeve. Same on the debate on Jubilee. I thought Andrew did great. I thought everybody did great on it. I won't be able to react to it because they striked me. But wouldn't it have been fun to do it? Maggot. Oh no. What are we doing? The unintegrated shadow selves. Hunting for demons? I think so. I don't know. I think us humans have to be real honest with ourselves about our capacities for evil, which I don't even believe in. But I know most people believe in evil. And until we can get to that point, I don't think we'll be able to resolve our wrongs. I think people genuinely view the most atrocious crimes acted out in history. I think people genuinely think it's so far away from themselves that it could never. And it's just, we got to evolve. We got to integrate. Okay. I'm typing on an iPad. Cut me some slack for the. I get it. You're fine. You don't believe in evil. Not in the. Yeah, no. It's all an illness to me. It's just varying degrees of it. But you can't really believe in evil when you realize people cannot control where they grow up in. People can't control a lot of factors that put you at risk. It doesn't mean we shouldn't lock them up. Lock all of them up. It's just that I think it's, I don't know, it's one of those moral dilemmas that I dealt with early. And I realized that evil does not exist. We just don't know how to handle we really don't. Mental illness. Not to say that everybody with a mental illness is evil or will commit a crime. Most don't, okay? But until we treat it as a mental illness, we're not going to solve those issues. You wanna fall down a rabbit hole? If every single act that you've ever seen that was evil could have been stopped if we recognize the mental illness in the person that committed the act, or if we recognize that evil didn't exist. Hold on, let me say this better. Think of, if you want to fall down a rabbit hole, look at all of the horrible crimes that have ever been committed and think about how, if this was a mental illness, would it have been stopped? And then when you keep falling down, yes, come back to me. Okay, and then we can figure out how to solve it. And I'm laughing, but it truly is so preventative on so many levels. The issue is that we like to have an us versus them mentality in almost every single decision we do. And we can't acknowledge when certain things affect behavior. Not to say that they shouldn't be absolved, but the amount of things we could have in place if we looked at it differently. I dream about it, okay? I dream about it. Would you call hard disagree on the non-existence of evil? Would you call greed mental illness? Greed? Mental illness? No. But how do you know that people kill out of greed? It'd be hard to prove. It's a greed. Are you talking about antisocial behaviors? I'm not saying that don't exist. Greed equals evil. Is it though? People kill just by looking at them. What are you talking about? Most people kill. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't know. Okay, but murder is not the only type of evil. Elaborate. The love of money is the root of all evil. Keep going. I'm listening. I'm unsure what you're asking me. I have nothing against any religion, but one must know history, and history was not good to those who were morally right or superior. History always was with superior, though, through power. Yeah, but we do still need societies run by power. It's just how we do that. We have one side that wants to eradicate any sort of hierarchy, even though there's hierarchies that are natural. Not necessarily saying natural is better, but if we know that certain things are natural, then how we organize things are going to follow similar suit if you want the function to be good. So, like, for instance, we can create a hierarchy where leaders are at the bottom. How do we do that? I don't know. I don't know. Somebody else can formulate that part. But it's like we can have leaders on the bottom that there's some sort of balance that requires checking in. That would require my whiteboard. Some sort of inversion of a hierarchy. That's how I see it. I don't know. Somehow where it's reinforced, or instead of having like everybody designated to a job per se, we have like groups that are in charge of jobs where it checks and balances itself. So when it gets back to the leader, it can formulate the right direction based on what they have from each group. That's one way to look at it. There's many others, but we need to get rid of this idea that we're not going to have a hierarchy at all, because people don't operate without a people don't find purpose without one, whether it's an illusion or not. I'm fringe when I say it's an illusion, okay? But like most people operate by doing things, getting rewarded for things. I think we should exploit the best of the best in every area, okay? As long as it's their choice. We have too many brilliant minds that should be exploited. I say that with love. The root of not having money is the root to all evil. Not really asking, just wondering how those evil behaviors are mental illness. It's a spectrum. It's a spectrum for sure. I guess when I realize when I say mental illness, I don't know if it's faulty on my part, but people think that they're like, if they're not mentally ill, they don't fall here. And I think everybody falls there. So I got to figure out a better way to communicate it. Like, I think everybody is susceptible to mental illness. Shit. I think the ones without one are not necessarily less mentally ill. I just think that they haven't sought treatment. I'm just kidding. But like miswiring, I guess. If we know that environment affects behavior and we set certain environments up to absolutely ruin people, then look at the political discourse as one of them. The fact that people think that there's like a distinction between sides, it's like, I guess, but not really. The behavior is the same. Just what people get mad about specifically, whether it's Trump's demons or it's their own, or it's like, I guess you could distinguish it, but not throughout history. I think it would be different for whatever thing it was. Maybe not. Maybe not. I mean, think about the fact that crime has gone up since the border has not been secure. Do you really think that we just have a shit ton of criminals coming in from another country? Just think about it for a moment, okay? This, like, I know it's really easy to maybe think that way, but the reality is that we're overpopulating certain areas that are not used to the population, or it's happening too quickly, and it's causing other people to react accordingly. And that violence that has gone up is not necessarily from just people coming from outside in. No, baby. If you think that way, you're going to have a rude awakening. It's not something that I'm happy about. It's like the mouse utopia experiment. You put too many people in a crammed area at a certain point, you know? There's only so many mentally ill that you can hospitalize. I mean, I think that the whole thing in New York with the guys punching women in the face, those were mentally ill patients that couldn't get a stay in the hospital bed, in my personal belief. We just don't have enough beds. So you see violence like that that's just like so out of that, so it's like, how do I know that that is like a mental illness thing? Like 1000%. It's because I know that typically the ones that are violent are court ordered into those beds, and there's only 8 of them per hospital. And so if a city is overpopulating too quickly and more people are getting access to the beds that aren't court ordered, then the ones that are going to be there rotating, it's like, it's a matter of time when it happens. I've seen it firsthand. This idea that there's men getting together through TikTok to hit women is mythical. It follows the same elements. It truly does. Like, I know the system far better than a lot of people. That's what happens when you have too many people coming in. I'm not saying don't treat them. You know, we do the best we can, but like, guys, we need asylums back. Unpopular opinion. Okay, this is a very big issue. It's not just an immigration thing, but you'll see it first in terms of violence and mental health issues. That's just like one thing. I don't have anything against religion. I think we need to learn how to integrate both, because, you know, I don't see an issue with religion. Even as I used to have a belief that religion would lead to violence in some regard. But that violence would have occurred with or without religion, in my opinion. I think is there instances where crimes are enacted because of religion? Yes. Okay, I'm not disregarding that. I just don't think it's on the grander scheme of things. I don't know. I think it depends on the person interpreting it, period. Okay. Some people interpret shit way different. And it's kind of crazy to think about, but it really is the case. I mean, if I sat down with somebody and was like, do you really think, you know, I pulled like a Richard Dawkins or something. Like, do you really think I crossed the Red Sea? It's like, no. They just follow the principles and the rules to be true. But I've also seen the mind break down and also follow these religious patterns. And then once the mind fully broke down, there was nothing else to break down. Religion has a way of, because of good and evil, it feeds on the tribalism that our brains inevitably go to for everything. It makes sense to me why people believe it. But when you watch it break down backwards, it makes you question why we'd still follow it. I'm not saying it doesn't have a foundational basis. It's for something. I just don't think it's necessary to rate it higher than secular ethics, for instance. I think there's a way we can integrate both. I just don't know what that is yet. But it truly comes down to the individual when the violence occurs. That's my pretty set on that. Okay. A lot of people don't acknowledge it, but I know how much the churches are helping the mentally ill more than the secularists. Sorry. That's a fact. That's a fact that is not known in the media and should be known. Does that mean that all churches are a holy send when it comes to the mentally ill? Yeah, honestly, like, it shocked me. Like, they be housing them, you know? And it's like, there's something to say about it, okay? They don't get half as much recognition as they should. And I'm not even Christian, okay? But I can acknowledge it. It's something that I think is left out in debates, whether there's like no statistics on it. But I went and searched this information out, and I was like, why is this not in the news? It should be. But it's they value people's fucking autonomy like no other, baby. That's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's hip-hop, but it's like, you know, they could be in the news for it. But no, they keep it hush hush. Love that for them. Love you. Bless you. Okay. The female rats turned into Instagram. What are we talking about, Roger? What are we talking about? Those are wild. Did you vote, Torshaa? I have not. I have not. Probably should have. But I have not yet. I may or may not be in Vegas for the election. I think we're going to do a show, Rolo and Sartain and I. That's if I can get there. Okay. I probably should have led with that, but I've had a lot on my mind. Rat utopia. If the miracles didn't happen, then it's a lie and will produce nothing good. Secular ethics are unfounded, and most modern ethics are based on religion. So I hear you. I think most secular ethics suck, except for my own. Just call me God. Kidding. You're not wrong. I think fundamentally we're secular ethics. If we're thinking of the same, I usually think of like a humanist ethics. What are we calling it? I can't even think straight. A lot of it still is on a contextual and relativistic standard. Not the worst thing. It's just, it's unreliable long term. Most of the time. Are modern ethics based on religion? Probably, honestly. The issue is that those can be deemed wrong in somebody who views reality differently than you. And I'm talking on the extreme examples. And my computer is gonna die. But things like somebody kills in order for them to be redeemed. It sounds crazy, but I lived it, okay? It's one of my biggest traumas. I literally lived it. But there are people that their reality is so warped that they can justify killing if it saves a family member. So if we could come up with some ethics that could account for that, that would be the best. But I don't think we can. Not yet. Not yet. But I love Christian ethics. Okay, virtue ethics, baby. I love it. It's winning in my book. It's just there's moments I'll find holes. Not maybe in this episode, but I have. I think the idea of could there be I won't go there. I won't go there. I was gonna say objective. Never mind. I won't even go there. Start your own collection basket, Church of Torshaa. I'll Torshaa get to the polls. No, never. Women were traded for food and other things. So are you saying we're the value? Thank you so much. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Tune in next time for Torshaa on for objectivity. I don't even think it exists anymore. I don't know. There's an objective truth for sure. Okay, actually, we all need to adopt that. The more that we can all come together on what objective truth is, the better. That doesn't necessarily mean that it infringes on anybody's rights per se, but I think the Dems are going to cannibalize themselves if we don't have some foundation or rules and then build off of it. This is so integral. I can't. It's giving spiral right now. Shout out to Ken Wilber. Rights don't exist. Oh no. You're right. They are social constructs, but so is a lot of the shit in the world. Even your reality is arguably a construct, but that's a topic for another day. If you like what you hear or you're stressed out, subscribe. Drink your water. Wear your SPF. Don't take shit from others. And don't be afraid to break the rules. Okay, that's a new one. Okay, some of you are just blindly obedient. Okay, be a little weird. We like the weirdness. Okay, love you. Bye.